12 Proposal Program to Change Paraguay. In this video we will go over the 12 proposal agenda that we have for Paraguay. Briefly, these proposals are as follows. Proposal number 1 is open source voting in all elections. Proposal number 2 is ordered choice voting for executive positions. Proposal number 3 is proportional voting for legislative positions. Proposal number 4 is mandatory sunset clauses so people get a chance to veto all laws on the books in every generation. Proposal number 5 is preemptive reviews of constitutionality of all laws, treaties, and executive orders by a randomly chosen jury of citizens. Proposal number 6 is a citizens' legislature so people not beholden to campaign contributions can carefully analyze and reject legislation not in their best interests. Proposal number 7 is the citizens' line item veto so that the people, not the president, get the final approval for any bill, treaty, or significant executive order that affects them. Proposal number 8 is total budget transparency, making every line item accessible online in real time to prevent wasteful spending and politicians from enriching friends and relatives. Proposal number 9 is direct election of cabinet officials, important directorates, and heads of government-controlled entities. Proposal number 10 is first in first out processing for all applications and licenses. Proposal number 11 is a citizens' standing grand jury chosen at random that citizens can appeal to without an attorney when public officials are not doing their jobs. Proposal number 12 is on government accountability and will be released later when the movement has more critical mass, so it is sure to make headlines. Now we will go into more details on each of them. Proposal number 1 is open source voting in all elections. Open source voting is a method of electronic voting that can be done in person or in the convenience of your home. There are many ways of implementing it. After the election, a single file of votes will be generated that everyone can count. It will be divided into two parts, a list of the people who voted and anonymized votes. The tally should exactly match. The list of people who voted allows people to detect ballot stuffing and ineligible voters. The anonymized list is done in such a way that each person can verify their vote was counted correctly based on a code only they know. Open source voting allows a verifiable count that should not be able to be hacked without detection and will allow for other proposals on this list that require computerized voting to be feasible. Proposal number 2 is ordered choice voting for executive positions. The first part of this proposal is enhanced ballot access, where people can pay a manageable fee to get on the ballot. Additionally, all loser laws preventing a primary loser from competing in the general election shall be repealed. Candidates will also appear as individuals and not lists of candidates selected by parties. Most importantly, people will vote based on an ordered list of candidates from most favored to least favored, instead of just picking one candidate. The winner is then decided by running head-to-head races between each candidate. This proposal destroys any rationale for two-party dominance over the political system. This is because people no longer need to vote strategically, because it is impossible to split the vote in head-to-head comparisons of the candidates. It also greatly increases the chances of smaller candidates without a lot of special interest money behind them getting elected. Combined with open source voting software, this list will allow people to better choose obscure candidates that agree with them. This can be done through computer matching surveys of beliefs, similar to how people look for matching when looking for a mate. Proposal number 3 is proportional voting for legislative positions. Enhancing ballot access, eliminating loser laws, and individual candidate races are also part of this election paradigm. The difference is, instead of just a winner-take-all race, all candidates receiving over a certain percentage of votes will receive a seat in the legislature. A person receiving 15% of the vote amongst those elected will account for 15% of the district's votes. This way the legislative district's votes will better reflect the views of that district. This goes even further than ordered choice voting in destroying a two-party us versus them system, since there will be a greater variety of different voices in the legislature. These factions will then be incentivized to work with each other to achieve consensus rather than just discrediting the other side. This system also prevents gerrymandering districts to manipulate representation in the legislature. Proposal number 4 is mandatory sunset clauses. All legislation, treaties, and executive orders affecting the public will have to be renewed periodically. For example, the period could be 7 years with a special 10 to 30-year initial grace period to condense currently bloated codes of law. In the grace period, the most recent legislative acts should expire first, since the most necessary laws, like those against murder and theft, are the oldest. Every single treaty and all laws and executive orders passed since January 1, 2020 will expire the first year if not renewed. The sunset clauses will ensure citizens get a chance to veto any existing legislation, particularly much of the horrible legislation done in the wake of the recent pandemic debacle. People should have a right to vote on legislation they never got a say on when first passed. Laws should also be constantly reviewed to get rid of ones that have been policy disasters or do not reflect modern realities. The need to recycle code will also keep legislators busy, deterring them from continually expanding the regulatory code just for the sake of acting like they are doing something meaningful. This is how they get around to wasting time on stupid ideas such as mandatory grocery bag taxes paid to big grocery store corporations, when those same stores are filled with unnecessary plastic. Proposal number 5 is preemptive reviews of constitutionality of all laws, treaties, and executive orders by a randomly chosen jury of citizens. These juries can veto the entire law or parts that are not constitutional. This process will ensure the questions of legality and respect for constitutional rights will be examined for every act proposed by the government. People will not have to violate the law after its passage just to challenge it in an expensive court proceeding. Citizens will get the final decision instead of politically appointed judges who might owe favors to the government officials that appointed and confirmed them. Citizen analysis also ensures that the laws are written so normal people can understand them and that complex 1 + 1 = 3 contorted legal logic is not used to justify expanding government power at the expense of constitutional rights. Proposal number 6 is a citizens' legislature. This essentially is a legislature of citizens chosen at random to review arguments for or against a law just like the elected legislature. However, since they did not need to grovel for corporate money to get elected, they are less likely to be influenced by special interests. This legislature collectively has a line-item veto over every item in the bill. This should weed out a lot of bad laws before they go to the general public. This step ensures that at least one group of citizens spend substantial time examining each piece of legislation so lobbyists are not able to sneak bad provisions through. Voting totals can also be used as a query filter in software for laws that people at large want to view to see items they pay special attention to for the citizens' line item veto. Proposal number 7 is the citizens' line item veto. This is the crown jewel of this agenda as it will give people the final vote on every issue at the ballot box and take away the presidential veto. This is the only way to prevent the influence of bribery and influence operations on the legislative process. This is because it is hard to bribe everyone, especially given it is a line-item veto and not an all-or-nothing veto. Medium-based budgeting with unified tax offsets can be used to ensure people do not just vote down all taxes while passing all expenses. This basically mandates some tax increase on a central tax everyone pays proportional with the amount of any spending allocated by the people. Computer matching algorithms can be used similar to the candidate selecting algorithms mentioned above to help people manage large amounts of legislation on the ballot. Electronic voting from proposal number 1 allows governments to call snap votes in times of emergencies like pandemics. The citizens' veto should decrease partisanship because everyone knows no matter who is elected, they can vote against really bad bills. This can empower more people to vote for people with good ideas as opposed to against people that tend to vote for bad bills. Presidents and executive officials can be elected based on their managerial skills and philosophy over their politics since they will now have no power in the legislative process. These first 7 laws address how policy is enacted. This will be sufficient for many Western nations that at least pretend to respect the rule of law. For Paraguay we are adding another 5 proposals to cut down on the massive amount of institutional corruption and lawlessness in the country. Proposal number 8 is total budget transparency. The government general ledger and that of all its agencies and controlled entities will be made public online in real time. Payees on legitimately classified projects can be obscured, but otherwise all other line items are made public without needing a public information request. This facilitates median-based budgeting in the citizens' line item veto and allows people to easily identify money being wasted or spent on enriching the friends and family of politicians. Proposal number 9 is direct election of cabinet officials, important directorates, and heads of government-controlled entities. There will be no term limits for these officials to prevent lame ducks. People will run as part of a ticket with their number 2, or equivalent to vice president, in case they leave office. This makes agency heads more accountable and prevents cabinet positions from being given to political cronies of the president. It also substantially reduces the power of the president, almost to the level of public relations officer since we removed his veto in proposal number 7. This is powerful combined with proposal number 8 because challengers will be incentivized to look and point out government waste in government finances during elections. Proposal number 10 is first in first out processing for all applications and licenses. All applications will be approved in the order they come in. No one can jump the queue by paying a bribe. A separate expedited review queue with a guaranteed minimum turnaround time can be provided for people willing to pay a higher fee to the government. This will be enforced by computer hashes that will make it difficult to change after the fact and timestamps generated outside the country that administrators cannot replicate. The software will not allow a license to be approved out of order. In cases where there is multi-channel communication or a back and forth process, there can be temporary holds allowing an application to jump the prior application, but only under very controlled circumstances. All of the timestamps and data will be made public in real time so people can detect any attempt at fraud to cover a major bribery operation. Proposal number 11 is a citizens' standing grand jury chosen at random that citizens can appeal to without an attorney when public officials are not doing their jobs. On a majority vote after hearing both sides of a case, the jury can order the public official to do his job with a certain time limit. In the event a public official does not comply or a public official has a record of repeated failure to adhere to the law, then by a supermajority vote of 3/4 the citizens can fire any government employee, including the president. If an official is accused of a criminal offense like bribery, and if the jury feels there is enough evidence, they can hire a private attorney to prosecute the official. This jury process ensures that corrupt officials will be held accountable and corrupt public prosecutors and judges will not let them get away with it. Proposal number 12 is about holding government officials accountable, and will be a case study on how legislation can be passed to do so. It will be released at a later date. One of the many reasons we are doing so is we want it to get a lot of attention when it is released. So, we want the movement to have a certain critical mass of people paying attention when the news breaks. These are the proposals. Feel free to agree or disagree with any of them. If you have any questions on any of them, we will be putting out more detailed videos and blog posts to address questions raised.